I'm your host Kavya Bhardwaj, and welcome to season 2, episode 5 of the TNT. And today we're talking about a conflict that feels like a bad movie, but it's actually a reality. To understand why the world is on a knife edge, let me give you an analogy, okay? Imagine this. You have a friend group. Let's call them the West Asia roommates. For years, two of them, the US and Iran, have not been on speaking terms. They've been passive aggressive, stealing each other's food, and bad mouthing each other to the neighbors. And suddenly, on February 28th, the US decides they've had enough. They team up with their best friend Israel, who has their own separate massive beef with Iran. And they don't just yell, they throw a brick through Iran's window, and they call it Operation Epic Fury. Now, the whole house is in chaos. But it's not just about the people fighting. The problem is where they're standing. They're fighting right in front of the only exit to the house, a tiny hallway called the Strait of Hormuz. Because these roommates are throwing punches, nobody can get in or out. And if you're a roommate like India, sitting in the corner just trying to live your life, you've suddenly realized you can't get your groceries delivered because the hallway is blocked. So, what actually happened on February the 28th? The US and Israel launched a massive coordinated strike. They said it was to stop Iran from building a nuclear bomb, the ultimate weapon in this room fight. But here's the twist. The US claims they're doing this to provide freedom to Iranians. Now, let's look at the politics of this whole scenario, right? Iran's regime is extreme. We all know that. They took a country that was historically diverse in its religions and cultures and flattened it into a rigid singular version of Islam. And right now, we're seeing something wild. Many Iranians are actually celebrating these strikes. Imagine hating on your own government so much that you cheer when the neighbors bomb your house. But let's be real. We all know that the US's intent isn't just about human rights. And one has to see the oil behind this freedom. The US needs to ensure that the hallway, the Strait of Hormuz, remains under a friendly roommate's control. So it's all about securing trade and not just souls. Also, if you were watching the news lately, a lot of people were surprised that why was Dubai made a pawn in this game of chess? Why were they involved? And suddenly in the line of fire. And that's because Iran is fighting asymmetrically, which basically means that they know that they can't beat the US Navy in a fair fight, right? So they're hitting their neighbors instead. They've launched drones and missiles at Dubai, targeting landmarks and airports. Why, you may ask? To show the world that if Iran burns, even the rich neighbors burn too. Debris is literally raining down on skyscrapers like Burj Khalifa that in a city that was, thought to be a safe haven. The message is clear. Nobody gets to stay neutral. Now let's talk about the economics behind it all. You might think that microeconomics is just graphs and math and very, very theoretical. But what's happening in West Asia is a literal textbook chapter for many economic students. In class, we've learned about market failure and supply shocks, and right now we're seeing a massive leftward shift of the supply curve for LPG. The reality is that India imports over 60% of its LPG, and the choke point is that 90% of those imports come through that one hallway that we talked about, the Strait of Hormuz. So, when that hallway gets blocked by warships and drones, the cost of bringing that gas to India skyrockets. Insurance for ships go up, or ships just stop coming. So, in your supply and demand diagram, when supply shifts left and demand stays the same, because obviously we need gas to cook, the price naturally shoots up. So, Economics isn't just theoretical now, it's the reason the government has to prioritize households over businesses. It's the reason people are standing in 4-hour queues for gas cylinders. And that price mechanism you study, it's currently deciding which families in Delhi can afford to eat a warm meal tonight. This is the human cost of a supply shock. The biggest issue here isn't just missiles, though, it's morale. The US is betting that the Iranian people will rise up and finish the job. Iran is betting that the world will get so sick of high gas prices that they'll force the US to stop. Basically, it's a game of chicken, but the stakes are World War III. So now both sides have their hands dirty. Iran is holding the world's energy hostage, and the US is using quote unquote liberation as a cover for economic control. And their roommates in the middle, like Dubai and various cities in India, are the collateral damage. We're living through a hallway fight that could change the global order. We rely on one narrow strip of water for our survival, and this is a gamble we can no longer afford to take. We need energy sovereignty so that our dinner doesn't depend on whether two roommates thousands of miles away decide to stop punching each other. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Teen Take. Stay analytical, look at those graphs, and remember that there are people behind these numbers. I'm Kavya Bhardwaj, and see you in the next episode. Bye bye.